Hi there, everybody. I'm Jason Bulmahn, the Game Master for Knights of Everflame, and today we're here to talk to Rachel about Linnaeus. Hey there, Rachel.
Hi, how's it going?
Oh, not bad. How are you?
Pretty good.
Awesome. What I'd like to do here today is do a deep dive into the choices you made that created Linnaeus. And let's start out with the name, Linnaeus. Where'd that come from?
It's literally the Latin scientific name of a specific beetle.
I see. So
Yeah.
you learn something new every day.
Yeah, so Linnaeus is that, and then Lennon, obviously, the Beatles, and John. And
So which came first, the beetle idea or the name?
the Beetle idea.
The Beetle idea,
Yeah, the
okay.
name came from that weird idea.
Yeah, so, your character has a real kind of dichotomy of, like, the choices you made, but the look, like, the mechanical choices versus the look and play style of the character. And it makes for a really interesting kind of blend. Yeah, especially, so we'll dig into that. But first I want to talk about, some of the choices that went into building this character. And in Pathfinder, we usually define those by your ancestry, your background, and your class. Now, for your ancestry, you get to choose an ancestry and you get to choose a heritage. But you went with half-elf. So as a result, kind of both those choices were made for you. What drew you to half-elf?
Usually I tend to play medium or humanoid characters because it's easier for me to wrap my head around, obviously, being that size. But also, I tend to go for class first and then find a race which has bonuses that'll help that class. So half-elf and cleric went together really well. And I thought, you know what, why not?
Sure.
Never played one before.
You're half elf and you're half human, but that comes from an interesting heritage that you yourself don't even fully understand.
Yeah.
But it does play into your character. I'm trying to remember how much of this we actually talked about in season one.
I think we said the word.
Yeah. You're pretty sure that your father is a Dampier. Yeah. And for those of you who don't know, Dampiers in our world are themselves the child of a vampire and a human. So there's some vampire blood in you, and not too distantly either. We're not talking about like 8 generations away. It's close. That plays into a lot of the backstory of Linnaeus,
yes,
right?
absolutely. Big part.
Yeah. Let's talk about your background. What background did you choose for Linnaeus?
She's a field medic. Yeah.
Okay. Now, in our game, that usually speaks to how you were raised. Backgrounds usually play into, kind of this is an expression of what you did when you were young and how you were brought up. Now, how was Linnaeus raised?
She was just raised in a monastery.
Okay.
And I think a large portion of the monastery gets their donations through like a medical ward.
Sure.
And that's where she learned a lot of her skills. That's where she spent a lot of her time trying to do good and bring the light of Sarenrae in through healing there.
And that's up in Ustalav,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So, interestingly enough, we had this discussion at the start of, before we started filming even season 1, about the fact that you were in Ustalav, but you had traveled to go and join the army in Lastwall. Now, Lastwall, for those, welcome to the geography lesson. For those of you not aware, Lastwall and Ustalav share a border. So you could have just walked across the border and arrived there.
Could have.
But you took a circuitous route and ended up on a barge that took you all the way around Lake Incarthen before you ended up. So you kind of did a bit of a tour of the region. So you traveled past Rasmuran. You probably stopped in at Kyanin briefly, Druma, Multhune, and then you kind of ended up in Nirmathos, heading inland to sign up to be part of the army. And what was the decision there? How did you end up being sent to Lastwall?
This isn't something we touched on, but I don't know if we're ever going to, so I'm going to say it anyways. She was kind of kicked out. They didn't shove her out the door. Because she's such a weird creature, and it's not something that's hidden. It's obvious that she has some darker thing in her bloodline. That everyone else in the abbey with her was very uncomfortable with her presence.
Yeah.
It's not really the kind of creature you would see worshiping a goddess of light.
Yeah.
It's very separated. But they sort of suggested to her that this would be a good place to go and that's where she was needed and that she could spread the light of Sarenrae right on the front lines of battle. And she was like, oh yes, yeah, that's definitely, I'm gonna go there and do that.
You were volunteered.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what? We have a great idea. Why don't you leave?
Yeah.
It's a
basically.
fantastic idea. You should go.
You should get out.
Yeah.
And we'll never see you again. Go to this place where you're going to spend the rest of your life. But she was all for it. She was like, yeah, I can help. Oh, yeah, I'm going to do it. If I can help, I'm going to do it.
So just kind of like, yes, all right, I'll go.
Absolutely.
So that leads us to your choice of class, and this is such a defining element for Linnaeus. Obviously, as a cleric, right? You decided to be a cleric, and the first and biggest choice you make as a cleric is what deity have you picked. Mm-hmm. So you went with Sarenrae. What drove you? What kind of drew you to the light, as it were?
Well, I am a moth.
Yeah.
I think I tend to like very lawful gods because it's very hard for me, Rachel, as a player to go, I'm going to be mean to this person actively and make evil choices. So I tend to always go for good characters.
Sure.
So it's easier for me to just do that. But Sarenrae specifically, I like the idea of this goddess of light and healing, but also fire and war.
There is like a cleansing flame
Yeah.
part of it, which speaks really interesting to your character background,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Just because of your blood and because of your heritage, there's an element to that really says, you were drawn to it, and I mean, maybe not even by your own choice, by the character's choice anyway, because you were left at a monastery,
Oh, yeah.
right? So Sarenrae also has elements of like retribution in her kind of domain and area of influence, that like she will do the right thing, but if you cross the line, she will come for you with the purging flame, right? So and it's been interesting to see, Linnaeus kind of take in some of that, because oftentimes you're super sweet and being friendly to your compatriots, but when someone crosses you, you quickly flip the switch into burn them.
Oh,
right?
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not quite there, but it's bordering on the territory of religious zealot almost.
Yeah.
Because I feel like she grew up in the center of this very, very intense religion. I feel like the followers of Sarenrae are very, very intense.
They are, and Ustalav is kind of a haunted nation.
Yeah.
It's filled with ghosts and vampires and werewolves and all sorts of creepy monsters. And, there are these bastions of faith where zealotry is very common, just because the land around them is so dark.
And I think that's where she learned it. She picked it up in the Abbey, watching all these people also, talk about how they're going to go out and kill all these vampires and all of these monsters and blah, 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 and how much that affected her as well. I think that's reflected in how quick she is to smite down evil.
Yeah.
Almost to prove that she's not evil.
I'm not sure we want to fully reveal some of the feat choices that you've made, but I think
No,
your
that's
character
okay.
sheet will be going up as part of this.
Yeah.
So, you have some pretty interesting feat choices, especially in your class feats, that play out really interestingly. Why don't you talk to us about the big one there?
Well, my favorite is Healing Hands,
Sure.
because then I get to do the D10s instead of the
Yeah,
D8s.
absolutely. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
my absolute favorite. For skill feats specifically, we have Battle Medicine, which was obviously going to be helpful as someone who can be on the front lines in a small party
Yeah.
doing healing, but also Ward Medic so that I can heal 2 people at a time, be the most effective actual healer cleric that I possibly could be, while still being able to smite things and burn some things. And then I also have Recognize Spell, which I didn't get to use last season. I'm hoping I'm going to get to
We're
use
a lot of
more.
spellcasters, yeah, and all of those are awesome.
Yeah.
I think the big one though, that I don't even think the rest of the players know. So hopefully they're not watching this. Right? Is the fact that you are the only character at the table who has multi-class.
I
feats.
am, yeah.
Yeah, you're not just a straight cleric. You have multi-classed into sorcerer.
Sorcerer, yeah.
Yeah, so you have sorceress ability.
I do.
And with being a sorcerer, you have to choose a bloodline. And what bloodline did you pick?
Oh, let me guess. Vampire.
Yeah, undead, right? Yeah. So, that's been really interesting, and I'm not sure anyone else at the table has even really fully caught on to it yet,
No.
because those powers haven't fully manifested yet. But you have that streak within you, and I mean, anybody looking at your character art it can't help but see that there's something a little off there, right?
No, she looks fine.
a cleric of Sarenrae
She's
who
a little
wears
pale.
blues and blacks.
Yeah, she's a little dark. There were actually a couple of the images, the NPC images that we were rifling through trying to choose, and I remember I sent you a couple, and I said, well, this is the one I'm leaning towards really, And you were like, yeah, go with that one. And it was the weirdest one. It was
Yeah.
either this or some beautiful, like, elven woman just casting a spell.
There was a lot of choices in there, but it was like, yeah, if this is the idea for your character, let's
Oh,
run
yeah.
with it. Let's
Oh, yeah.
find a way to make it
I
work.
wanted to make her weird.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that worked.
Well, because, one of the things that was big for me, when creating this story in this game was that all of you were able to fully make your own characters and be engaged in them. So I was always excited to see what all of you came up with, and Linnaeus is really far out there, and it's great to see her.
She's
her
a character,
grow.
all right.
Is there anything else you want to share about Linnaeus and her backstory with everyone?
No, there are actually some secrets I want to keep about her.
Absolutely.
This isn't even the weirdest part of her. There's so much more.
There's so much more strangeness to behold.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you know what, Rachel? I want to thank you for stopping by here today to talk with all of us about your character. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in. If you want to see more of Linnaeus' exploits, tune in to Season 2 of Knights of Everflame. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.